He's a director, Center for China Studies, and he's a member of the International Advisory Committee of Beijing-based China-Africa Institute. You're welcome to
Thank you.
Nigeria today.
Thank you for having me, madam.
Also with us in the studio is Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omali. He's an international affairs analyst. You're welcome to Nigeria today.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
Now, I'll start with you, Charles. What is the significance of the visit of this Chinese minister to Nigeria?
Well, like you know, it's been a tradition stretching over 35 years that each year China Minister of Foreign Affairs begins his international engagement with a visit to Africa. And he has done this. Visited, he was in Namibia. From Namibia, he went to Congo Republic and Chad, and now Nigeria. Nigeria and China have long-standing cooperation. They became strategic partners in 2005. Just last September, when President Tinubu paid a state visit to China and also participated at the China-African Forum on China-African Cooperation, a new understanding was reached, comprehensive strategic partnership towards building a community of shared future for the two countries, which means within the framework of this comprehensive partnership, anything can be discussed, anything is possible. The two sides keep engaging and expanding the scope of cooperation. In tangible terms, we have had quite a lot coming in recently. Just some few days ago, the China Development Bank provided a concessional loan of over $250 million for the Kano-Kaduna railway, and the $2 billion currency swap has also been offered. So Nigeria has also had the Nigerian Trade House in China. In 2018, China created a special zone, a special mechanism to drive China-African economic trade. That is China-African Trade and Economic Expo in Hunan. Nigeria was one of the first African countries to build a permanent trade center. I think Nigeria is focused on engaging and the opportunity of the two sides. I believe China and Africa are both opportunities to themselves, and each side engages robustly to engage and make use of this opportunity. So the visit of Foreign Minister Wang Yi is significant, it's traditional, it underscores the traditional friendship between the two sides. It also offers an insight to the future, the security of the partnership between the two sides. It tells you that Africa and Nigeria is fundamental to China foreign relations, and this is reinforced by this tradition that has lasted over 3 years. So it is really significant that he came to Nigeria.
Okay. Now, to you, Dr. Adoyi, having heard from Charles here, give us your own perception or your own perspective of the Nigeria-China relation. How would you describe it?
Nigeria and China has come a long way, just like Charles has said. Nigeria and China has had a very, very robust bilateral diplomatic relations for quite a long time. With the last year when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu visited China during the FOCAC, a lot of things were achieved by that visit. China pledged about $50 billion for the whole of Africa to intervene in a number of sectors. Don't forget that China's investment in Nigeria has reached about $2.7 billion as of 2024 in various sectors, including motorcycle assembly by the Royal Company and several other companies operating in both the textiles and other manufacturing sectors. China has also been a very important trade partner of Nigeria, especially in crude oil sales. Nigeria has been supplying them in oil and gas and several other products, and vice versa. China has been bringing a lot of their products to Nigeria. So we have had a very, very robust relationship, to the extent that China's total export to Nigeria is amounting to about $22.5 billion. That shows the quantum of trade relationship between Nigeria and China. And when you extend it to the rest of Africa, because China has a deliberate policy of engaging with Africa, and that is why last year they hosted the FOCAC, 50 African heads of states were in China. And with that policy, especially on their Silk and Belt Road Initiative, they have been able to invest hugely across the African continent. It is also important to note that they have taken the issue of African security very, very paramount. And that is why a whopping $163 million have been budgeted to enhance security within the African continent. Out of this, 1,000 troops, soldiers are going to be trained by China, and 1,000 policemen are going to be trained. All this China is doing because it wants to have a very, very important foothold in Africa. China has been able to see Africa as the continent of the future because we have all the mineral resources, and that is why China are coming in. And let me also say that one of the major attractions for China, why China, there is a vacuum that China wants to fill, and that vacuum is with the exit of France from most of the Francophone countries now, especially against the backdrop of the coup in Burkina Faso, Mali, and so on. There's a void which China is trying to fill, and that is why China is taking the relationship with Africa very, very, very seriously. And by the time China moves in now, the West will know that yes, it is not business as usual with their former colonies in Africa, and that is why China's coming is very, very important. Like Charles said, China makes it a routine that every year they start their visit, and they have gone around, and it is very instructive that Nigeria is one of the countries. In fact, the minister is rounding up the trip in Nigeria. So I think it's a very good one, and we also have to look at relationship with China very well.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adoyi. Now, back to you, Charles. Now, let's look at diplomatic and political relations between the two countries. So looking at this visit, do you see is strengthening, relations, bilateral relations, and also, playing a major role in these areas?
Well, like my friend said, Nigeria and China cooperation is a very important one. It's not new. The two countries established diplomatic relations in 1971, and since then it's been a very great endeavor with the two countries. In recent times, the relation has become quite tangible, delivering tangible outcomes. I've just told you that at the visit of President Tinubu in China last year in September, 19-point agreement was reached on comprehensive strategic partnership between Nigeria and China. And of course, it involves securing, each of them are sensitive to the core of their national interest. Nigeria has been a clear upholder of one China principle, which unequivocally states there is only one China in the world, and Taiwan is part of China's national sovereignty, sovereign expression. Nigeria is a methodical upholder of that very important principle, very foundational to China modern state. And of course, China also upholds the unity, indivisibility of Nigeria as a sovereign entity. So this is the foundation upon which their diplomatic relation has been robustly enhanced. In practical terms, quite a lot of tangible has been delivered. Nigeria got her first ever deep sea port, Lekki Deep Sea Port, under the framework of the Belt and Road International Corporation, which focused on connectivity, building bridges both in metaphorical and literal sense building bridges of understanding, as well as building bridges to drive connectivity within the continent. So China has been a partner and in all this, and Nigeria also is reaching out. Like I told you, Nigeria was among the first few African states to establish a permanent trade center in China. With President Tinubu's visit, he came back. For the first time in Nigerian history, he appointed a special directorate to oversee the strategic partnership between Nigeria and China, a special director general to oversee and align issues of China-African cooperation, its outcomes to national development plan. This is unprecedented in Nigerian diplomatic history. It shows very clearly that Abuja is taking serious Beijing as a partner, credible partner, reliable partner when it comes to development. And this relation has been built on pragmatism. No string attached. You are not, China is not saying, don't like this man to like me. Don't engage with this man to engage me. China engages in broad partnership. It does not do alliances. It does not do axis. It organizes broad partnership, open hand to the whole part of the world. And China does not think it's filling any gap. China is naturally open to partnership across the world. And by the way, China-African cooperation is not new. It's been as old as the two countries, emerging on the international scene as sovereign states. If you remember, when China built the first ever flagship railway from Zambia to Tanzania, China was still poor, poorer than most African countries. But out of understanding that the two sides have common destiny of ending colonialism, of ending colonial occupation, and focus on self-development, building economy that is both inclusive and self-reliant, China began to engage Africa robustly. So as far back as 1973, China built and delivered Africa's longest railway, the Zambia-Tanzania Railway, which is called the Railway of Freedom. And it's been a long one. If you remember, General Gowon visited China in 1974, had a meeting with the great Chairman Mao, and the framework for robust. And if you remember, during the Nigerian Civil War, China stood for the indivisibility of Nigeria as one nation. So I think it's a long way. The most important thing in recent time is become more pragmatic. It's been delivering tangible outcomes. We do hope Nigeria can build what I call strategic resilience.
Okay, I'll have to stop you, Charles. I know you have got a lot to say. So that's it. You also say something. Now, Dr. Adoyi, having heard what Charles had to say about the relationship of China and Nigeria, they've really come a long way, I must say, or we all agree on that. Now, talking about the trade relations, there have been concerns from some Nigerians that over the years we've seen the influx of substandard goods coming in from China. Now, how can the government and stakeholders ensure that Nigeria's interests remain protected in its relationship with China?
Well, I listened to Charles very well when he said that China has no interest or no motives. They are just doing it because they just want to engage with Africa. Maybe I misunderstood what he was trying to say. The fact is that, just like you have said, the trade between Nigeria and China is very unequal. It's unbalanced. Chinese imports to Nigeria is humongous. We've been importing a lot of products from China. We have been consuming a lot of their manufactured products, both textiles, machineries, telecommunications, ZTE. They are operating in Nigeria, very huge telecommunication companies, and so on. So the trade between Nigeria and China is imbalanced. So we always have a trade deficit with China. China also, though, have been giving very soft loans to us, like he talked about, the railway modernization plan, even the airport modernization plan, and several other projects. Today, as we speak, about $33 billion have been invested in the brass industrial park by the Chinese. So the Chinese are doing quite a lot. But again, it is not out of it's not out of love or whatever that they are doing it. They are also benefiting a lot. If you go to many of our rural communities, Chinese companies are there. Not necessarily government companies, but Chinese companies. They are there prospecting for lithium in Nasarawa and several other places in Zamfara and several other places. Chinese companies are there in mining and various sectors. They are there. And we have had complaints about Chinese companies maltreating or underpaying Nigerians. All these are issues. So their coming is also for their own economic benefit. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. In as much as they are pumping a lot of money to Africa, they are pumping a lot of money to Nigeria, they are assisting us towards economic development, we should also be very wary. It is not all that glitter that is gold. We would not want what happened in the past, where we were colonized indirectly to resolve. So in dealing with China, we have to be very, 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 very careful and tactical. The relationship will have to be of mutual benefits to both countries. We must try as much as possible to regulate the activities of Chinese companies in the country, and also to ensure most of their companies have been given a lot of tax reliefs. Most of them are operating in export processing zone, like you mentioned, the Lekki deep ports and several at the Ogun free trade zone. Most Chinese companies are there. About 2 or 3 of them are operating even in the Tinapa Cross River Park. So we should also be very, very wary. But in international economic relations, we should be very, very circumspect and ensure that whatever agreements, whatever transactions we are having, not only with China, with the rest of the world, we should take most and foremost the multiply effect on our economy and the benefit that it's going to bring to our people.
Okay, thank you. Now, Charles, I know you have something to say immediately because. But before you go ahead, I also want to. There's an issue he raised here, in terms of balance. Yeah. So how can we, have a balance in between both countries? And again, what areas of collaboration can both countries expect to further in the coming years?
Okay. Well, on this question of balance, one, I could never suggest that the Chinese are for the Christmas. Their framework is win-win. They are not. They also have the Communist Party of China. The governing party is a very responsible party that delivers value to her people. It's an accountable political party. So Chinese organize accountable governance. They don't throw resources that has no meaningful impact in generating returns. So they are not frivolous, neither are they, because the party is accountable, responsible, and there are several mechanisms through which the party is held accountable. So it can't afford to undertake for the Christmas. So what it proposes is win-win framework. I hear so much about people talking about being wary of the Chinese. I think my response is we have to build capacity. Build sufficient institutional, structural capacity that enables us to get the best out of any bargain, at any table, whether with the Chinese, with the French, with the Americans, with the Russians. If you don't have capacity, if you don't have the institutional framework that responds and engages the outcome, domesticate it and build it into your national aggregate, you will be on a merry-go-round, not just for the Chinese. So for me, the answer of being wary is build capacity, strengthen our ability to get things from our partners, to engage our partners beneficially to our purpose. They also have a purpose. They are building capacity. China is a country that delivers value. Its resilience, its competitiveness is based on value creation and value multiplication. And you cannot be creating and delivering value if you do not have capacity. So my response to Africa, to Nigeria, in respect of how do we respond to China's opportunity, because I believe the two sides are opportunity to each other. So the one who has better capacity, who has better understanding of the issues at stake, has prospect of getting more, the bigger share of the cake. So I think, in my view, we should build greater capacity, greater institutional transparency, credibility, and resilience to engage more practically, more fruitfully, and more beneficially from the opportunities of our two-side cooperation. The opportunities are mutual, but to leverage it, we must build the necessary capacity.
Now, just before we go, Dr. Adoyi, what are the long-term strategic goals, for Nigeria-China relations?
Well, there's a lot of prospects in Nigeria and China relationship. We know we need a lot of things from them, especially in the area of transfer of technology. We need China to assist us in a lot of ways, and which they are trying, especially in developing our infrastructure and also trying to industrialize. They need to go all out to help us, especially in the area of agriculture. We need to mechanize our farming system, and we have a lot to learn from China in that regard. We also need to adopt technology. China has been able to fabricate a lot of machines, equipments that we will need, especially to kickstart our small-scale agro businesses. So, especially in the area of cold rooms for preservation, preserving our food crops and so on. So there's a lot of prospects. Outside the infrastructural development they have been assisting us, we will need more of Chinese expertise in this area so that we can be able to solve the issue of food insecurity.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Adoyi Matthew Mali, International Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution. And of course, I heard Charles Amanijo, Director Center for China Studies, and he's also a member of the International Advisory Committee of Beijing-based China-Africa Institute, CAI. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, madam.
And thank you for being part of the program. Don't forget, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also check out this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I'm Eukaria Clinton. Goodbye.